Welcome back to the English Talk community. I'm Julia, and I'm so happy to be with you again today. Whether you're walking to work, lying on your bed, or making a cup of tea in your kitchen, thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. This podcast is a space for learners from all over the world who want to feel more confident speaking and understanding English. It doesn't matter where you're from or what level you're at. If you're someone who wants to improve step by step, you're in the right place. Today, I want to talk to you about something that a lot of people have been asking about. It's a question I hear all the time in comments, emails, and even from my own friends. Can I really learn English while I sleep? Maybe you've asked yourself the same thing. Maybe you've seen those videos or apps promising that you can become fluent just by playing English audio during the night. I know it sounds amazing. Who wouldn't want to improve their English while resting? Imagine waking up after a good night's sleep and suddenly being able to speak more fluently. It sounds too good to be true, right? Well, in this episode, we're going to explore that question honestly and with a lot of care. But before we dive into it, let me ask you something. What made you start learning English? Was it for work? Travel? Maybe you have friends or family who speak English and you want to connect with them better. Or maybe it's just something you've always wanted to do for yourself. Whatever your reason is, I want you to keep that reason in your heart while we talk today. Because this episode is not just about one method or one idea. It's about understanding how to learn in a way that works for you, something that fits your life and your energy. Let's be honest. Learning a language can feel like a long journey. Some days it feels exciting, and other days it feels slow or frustrating. That's normal, and that's why people are always looking for ways to make the process faster or easier. The idea of learning while you sleep is so attractive because it promises progress without extra time or effort. You just press play and let your brain do the work while you rest. Sounds perfect, doesn't it? But I'm not here to sell you a dream. I'm here to help you understand what really works. And I'm going to do it in a way that's warm, simple, and based on real experience. You might already know that here on this podcast, I love to bring real stories into our conversations. I talk about people from different cities and cultures who are learning English just like you. Because I believe that stories help us connect with each other and with our own process. They show us that we're not alone. So, yes, today we're going to talk about the idea of learning while you sleep. But we're also going to talk about motivation, consistency, and small things you can do every day that truly make a difference. And just before we move forward, I want to ask a small favor. If you've been enjoying this podcast and feel that it helps you in your learning journey, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a like. That small action helps more people around the world find this community. And more importantly, it tells me that what I'm doing here matters to you. You don't have to write a review or anything fancy. Just a simple like or follow makes a big difference. Because the more people join us, the more connected and strong our learning community becomes. You see, what I really want to do today is take a bit of pressure off your shoulders. I know that sometimes the more we want to improve, the more we feel that we're not doing enough. Maybe you've thought to yourself, I should be studying more, or I'm too slow. I hear those words all the time from my students, but the truth is, learning doesn't always have to be hard or painful. It can be enjoyable, peaceful, and even part of your rest. What matters is how we use the time we already have, not how many hours we add to our day. And that brings us back to our topic. The idea of learning while you sleep touches on something very real. We want to make the most of our time. Many of us live busy lives. We have jobs, families, responsibilities, and sometimes it feels like there's just no space for one more thing. So if you've ever thought, maybe I can learn while I sleep, I get it. I really do. It means you care. It means you're looking for creative ways to stay connected with English. And that's something to celebrate. So today, I want to speak to that part of you. The part that's trying, the part that shows up even when it's tired, the part that wants to believe it's possible to learn in a way that feels natural. Because yes, there is value in passive learning. And yes, your brain does incredible things while you sleep. But there are also a lot of myths and confusion out there, and I want to give you clarity. You don't need a perfect method. You don't need to follow what everyone else is doing. What you need is to understand your brain, your habits, and your rhythm. And once you do, you can start using even small moments in your day to grow your English skills, including those quiet minutes before bed, including those calm hours when your body is resting and your mind is soft. This episode is going to be gentle and honest. I'm not going to throw complicated research at you or make big promises. Instead, I'm going to walk with you through ideas, stories, and simple tips that can help you feel more confident about how you use your time and energy in this learning journey. So wherever you are, take a deep breath. Let go of the pressure to be perfect. Open your mind to the idea that learning can be flexible and that rest is not the opposite of progress. It's part of it. Let's explore this together. Can you really learn English in your sleep? That question has probably crossed your mind more than once, especially if you've ever searched for quick ways to improve your English. You might have seen a video on social media that says something like, "Just listen to this while you sleep and wake up fluent in English." Or maybe you've downloaded an app that claims to train your brain during the night. It sounds almost magical. But deep down, maybe you're wondering, is that actually possible? Or is it just another internet myth that sounds too good to be true? Let me tell you why this topic is worth your attention. Because behind that simple question, there's something powerful. The desire to learn more, to use your time wisely, and to grow without stress. And that's something I deeply respect. If you're listening to this right now, it's because you care about your English. You want to make progress, and you want to do it in a way that fits into your life. That's what makes you different. You're not just waiting for fluency to happen. You're showing up, even when you're busy, tired, or unsure. And that's exactly why I want you to keep listening. Today, I'm not just going to give you a yes or no answer. Instead, I'm going to walk you through what science says, what learners around the world are doing, and what actually works when it comes to learning English. We're going to look at how your brain responds to language during sleep and how you can use that knowledge in a smart, practical way. No hype, no magic tricks. Just honest, useful information that you can apply today. Because your time matters. Your effort matters. And I want you to get the most out of both. I know how tempting those sleep learning promises can be. I've had students come to me and say, "Julia, I listened to English all night for a week, but I don't think it helped." Or, "I tried sleeping with vocabulary recordings, but I still forget the words during the day." And you know what? That's completely understandable, because listening to something while you sleep feels like learning. It feels like you're doing something productive, even when your body is resting. But the real question is, what kind of learning actually happens during sleep? And how can you use that to your advantage, instead of wasting your time? You see, our brains are always active. Even when we're asleep, our minds are working, processing emotions, memories, and sometimes even language. That's why dreams can feel so vivid. But learning a language, especially a language like English, isn't just about hearing words. It's about understanding them, connecting them to meaning, and using them in real situations. And for that, your brain needs more than just passive audio. It needs engagement, repetition, and a little bit of effort. Not a lot, but the right kind of effort. That's why in this episode, I want to share a few key ideas that can change the way you think about learning during rest. First, I'll show you how nighttime listening can be part of a bigger strategy, not the whole strategy. Second, I'll give you simple, realistic tips you can use to make your English environment stronger, even when you're not actively studying. And third, I'll help you recognize what actually leads to fluency, so you don't waste time on things that sound exciting but don't really work. But let me go back to that original question. Can you learn English in your sleep? It depends on what you mean by learn. If you mean suddenly becoming fluent just by playing a recording at night, then no, that's not how the brain works. But if you mean reinforcing what you already know, building better familiarity with sounds and rhythms, and making your brain more comfortable with English, then yes, there's something valuable there. It's not magic, it's reinforcement. And reinforcement is a powerful tool when used the right way. Let me tell you about Diego. He's from Madrid, and he works in tech. He's been learning English for years, but often felt frustrated with his progress. He told me he used to play grammar lessons while he slept, hoping to memorize the rules, automatically. After a few months, he realized he wasn't remembering much. But instead of giving up, he shifted his approach. Now, before bed, he listens to short English stories he already understands. He says it helps him feel more relaxed, and over time he noticed that his confidence with spoken English improved, not because of the sleep itself, but because of the calm, consistent exposure that made English feel more natural. And then there's Mira, from Mumbai. She used to believe she had to study hard every night, pushing herself until she felt exhausted. But that routine left her feeling burned out. When she changed her strategy and added light listening before sleep, like a slow conversation podcast or gentle storytelling, she found that her mornings felt more connected to English. Not because she learned something new during sleep, but because her brain stayed in touch with the rhythm and tone of the language. These are real people, with real lives, just like you. And what their stories tell us is this. It's not about finding a magic solution. It's about building a soft, consistent relationship with English, one that feels good and fits your life. That's why listening to this podcast regularly, even while doing everyday things, is already part of that process. You're giving your brain gentle contact with English, without pressure, without stress, and that kind of learning lasts much longer than cramming vocabulary or playing grammar audio through the night. If you're still wondering whether to try sleep listening or not, I want you to know this. It's okay to experiment. Try different things, see how your brain responds. But always remember, the most important part of language learning happens when you are awake, when you make choices, speak out loud, reflect on your mistakes, and celebrate small victories. Sleep can support that process, but it can't replace it. And that's where the real value of this conversation lies. It's not just about whether you can or can't learn while you sleep. It's about learning to use your time and energy in ways that support your growth. It's about letting go of shortcuts that don't deliver and focusing on habits that truly help. You don't need magic, you need clarity, and that's what I hope to give you here. So as you keep listening, stay curious. Let your questions stay open for now. Because when we stay open, we find better answers that actually fit who we are and how we live. That's the heart of everything we do here in the English Talk community. It's not just about language. It's about building a path that feels possible, a path that works for you. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to invite you to be part of something bigger. If you're listening right now and you've been enjoying what we're talking about, this is the perfect time to connect with us in a simple but powerful way. Just by subscribing to this podcast and leaving a like or a positive rating, you're not only helping yourself stay on track, you're also helping others find their way to better English. When you do that, you're sending a signal out into the world that says, this matters, this helps, and I promise it really does. You see, we live in a time where there's so much information out there. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. You might scroll through 100 tips and videos and still feel unsure about what really works. That's why communities like ours are so important. When you find a place that gives you clear guidance, encouragement, and consistency, that's not something to take for granted. That's something to nurture. And the truth is, the more people who support this kind of content, the more people we can reach, and the more we all grow together. Learning English is a journey. And yes, it's a personal one. But it's also something that becomes easier, more meaningful, and more enjoyable when you're a part of a community. Here in the English Talk community, we don't believe in doing it all alone. We believe in learning through connection, by sharing stories, celebrating progress, and supporting each other when things feel challenging. That's why your support, even something as small as clicking subscribe, has such a big impact. Sometimes people ask me, Julia, why do you always remind us to subscribe or like the episodes? And the answer is simple. Because I know how valuable it is to have a space that's built just for learners like you. A space where there's no pressure to be perfect. A space where you can hear real stories, get practical advice, and feel inspired to keep going. When you support that kind of space, you're helping it stay alive, not just for you, but for thousands of others who are walking the same path. And maybe today, someone just like you will find this podcast because of a small action you took. Maybe they've been feeling discouraged, thinking their English isn't improving fast enough. Maybe they've been wondering if they should just give up. But then they come across this episode, hear a message that speaks directly to them, and realize they're not alone. That changes everything. That creates momentum. And it starts with something as simple as pressing a button. So if you're learning English and want to feel supported, join us. You're not alone in this journey. When you subscribe, you're not just following a podcast. You're stepping into a place where you can grow, feel encouraged, and know that you're part of something real. And when you leave a like or a rating, you're saying, yes, I believe in this. I want more of this. That voice matters. Your voice matters. It helps shape what we do next, and it helps bring this message to someone who might need it more than you can imagine. Think of it this way. Every time you come back here to listen, you're investing in yourself. You're taking one more step toward the English you want to speak, the confidence you want to feel, and the opportunities you want to create. But you're also lighting the way for someone else. Someone in Berlin, in Jakarta, in Sao Paulo, in Nairobi, who's listening just like you, hoping to find a message that speaks to their heart. We may be in different places, with different lives and schedules, but our goals connect us. This isn't about building a massive audience just for the numbers. It's about building a meaningful community where everyone is welcome and where learning feels human. It's about making sure that people like you, people who are motivated, curious, and trying every day, have a place where they can feel heard, guided, and understood. And it all begins with your simple decision to be part of this. So if you haven't already, take a second to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, rate the podcast, or share it with someone you know who's also learning English. Those actions may seem small, but I promise they're incredibly powerful. They tell the world, this is worth supporting, this is helping me, and it might help you too. That's the spirit of community, and that's what we're building here together. And if you're already subscribed, thank you. Truly. I don't take that for granted. Every message, every listen, every bit of support you give, it fuels the work we do. It allows us to bring more episodes, more stories, more encouragement your way. And I hope you feel that support coming back to you every time you press play. In the end, learning English isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about showing up for yourself, even when things feel slow or uncertain. And it's about finding others who are walking the same road so you don't have to figure it all out on your own. That's what this community is here for. So thank you for being here, and thank you for making this space possible. Let's talk about something that a lot of people have heard, maybe even hoped was true. The idea that you can learn English while you sleep. I know it sounds amazing, right? Just imagine, you put on your headphones, close your eyes, drift off to sleep, and wake up the next morning speaking better English. It sounds like the perfect solution, effortless, convenient, and kind of magical. But where did this idea actually come from? Why do so many people believe it? And is there any truth behind it? Over the years, especially with the rise of the internet and social media, the idea of sleep learning, sometimes called hypnopedia, has become incredibly popular. There are videos with millions of views promising that if you play English vocabulary, phrases, or dialogues while you sleep, your brain will absorb the information and you'll wake up with improved fluency. You'll often see titles like Learn 1,000 English Words While You Sleep or Fluent English Listening During Deep Sleep. It's no surprise that these videos are so popular. Everyone wants a shortcut, especially when learning something as complex as a new language. But even before YouTube or podcasts, this idea wasn't new. The concept actually dates back to the 1950s and 1960s. Back then, there were experiments where researchers played audio recordings to people while they were sleeping, hoping to influence their memories or learning abilities. Some of those early studies claimed to show promising results, suggesting that the human brain might still process certain sounds during sleep. This gave birth to the fantasy that maybe, just maybe, you could learn complex things, like a language, without ever needing to be awake. As you can imagine, people love the idea. Who wouldn't? We all live busy lives. We work, we study, we take care of our families. And on top of that, we try to improve our English. The thought of turning our sleep into study time feels like gaining extra hours in the day. It feels like hacking the system. So this idea kept growing. It moved from scientific curiosity into mainstream belief, and today it's part of language learning culture, especially online. I've heard from many learners who've told me things like, Julia, I listen to English dialogues every night while I sleep. I hope it's working. Or, I downloaded these sleep learning tracks. Do you think it will help me speak better? And I understand where these questions come from. It's not about laziness. It's about the desire to make the most of every minute. It's about trying to find ways to speed up the learning process, especially when progress feels slow. But here's the thing. While the idea is very attractive, it's also important to understand what's real and what's just wishful thinking. There's a big difference between hearing sounds while you sleep and actually learning from them. Real learning, usually requires more than just passive exposure. It requires attention, memory engagement, repetition, and sometimes a bit of struggle. And when we're asleep, our brains aren't exactly in learning mode the way they are when we're awake. Still, the myth remains strong. You'll hear it in conversations, read it in comments, or see it recommended in language forums. It's become one of those popular ideas that people repeat because it feels good, even if they're not completely sure it works. And let's be honest, it's comforting. If you're tired, overwhelmed, or frustrated with your English journey, the idea of getting results while resting is very tempting. Sometimes these beliefs are even reinforced by small experiences. For example, someone might say, "I listened to English audio every night for a month, and I feel like I understand more now." And that might be true. But we have to ask, was it the sleep listening itself, or the combination of exposure, focus, and motivation during the day that made the difference? Often, people who listen to English while sleeping are also practicing actively when awake. They're more motivated, they're creating an immersive environment, and they're thinking about English more often. All of those things can help improve your skills. But it doesn't mean that sleeping through lessons is the reason why. There's also the marketing side. A lot of products are sold with the promise of effortless learning. Apps, recordings, playlists. They use catchy phrases and beautiful images to sell you the dream of learning without trying. It's a very profitable idea. And because of that, the myth keeps getting stronger. But just because something is popular or profitable doesn't make it true. Now, that doesn't mean sleep is useless for learning. In fact, sleep plays a very important role in memory. When you sleep well, your brain organizes and strengthens what you learned during the day. That's why getting enough sleep after studying is actually one of the best things you can do. So, in a way, sleep is your learning partner, but not in the way those videos suggest. It helps consolidate your knowledge, not create new knowledge from scratch. There's a difference between strengthening a memory and creating one. Sleep helps the first, but not usually the second. It's also important to understand how we process sound during sleep. Our brains don't just turn off completely, but they don't operate in the same way either. Most of what we hear during deep sleep doesn't reach the levels of processing needed for understanding language or forming lasting memories. There are lighter stages of sleep where some sound processing might happen, but it's still very limited. So, when we ask, is it possible to learn English in your sleep? What we're really asking is, can my brain do something amazing without my conscious effort? Can I take a shortcut and still get the result I want? It's a beautiful question, and I completely understand why it's so popular. But we also have to look at it with honesty. We have to be clear about what works and what doesn't. Because when you base your learning on myths, you can waste time, lose motivation, and end up feeling disappointed. And I never want you to feel that way. That's why we're having this conversation. Not to take away the hope or the magic, but to replace it with something even better. Real strategies, real understanding, and real progress. Because when you know what actually helps, you can focus your time and energy in the right places. You can stop chasing shortcuts and start building habits that lead to real change. So let's talk about what science really says about learning English, or any language, while you sleep. I know it's one of those ideas that sounds so fascinating, that we want it to be true. And because so many people believe in it, or at least hope for it, I think it's important to slow down and look at what researchers have actually discovered about this topic. And don't worry, I'll keep it simple and practical. This is not going to be a science lecture. I just want to help you understand how your brain works during sleep and what that means for your English learning journey. First, it's important to know that your brain doesn't completely shut down when you sleep. In fact, it stays very active. There are different stages of sleep, and during each stage, your brain is doing different things. Some stages are for deep rest and physical recovery, while others are more about processing information. One of the most fascinating stages is called REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. This is when you usually dream, and your brain becomes very active in organizing memories and emotions. Now here's where it gets interesting. Scientists have studied what happens when people are exposed to sounds, words, or even full sentences during sleep. They've used things like brain scans and EEGs to track brain activity in sleeping subjects. And what they've found is that your brain can register certain types of audio input while you sleep, especially during lighter sleep stages. That means your brain is not completely ignoring what it hears. Some parts of it are still listening, in a very limited way. However, and this is a big point, just hearing sounds during sleep is not the same as learning. Learning involves more than just exposure. It requires attention, repetition, understanding, and usually some kind of emotional or mental connection. During sleep, your brain isn't in the right condition to process complex language structures, store them in long-term memory, and connect them with meaning in a deep way. That's why simply playing English audio at night won't turn you into a fluent speaker. Researchers at institutions like the University of Zurich, the Max Planck Institute, and others have conducted controlled studies on this. In some experiments, people were taught word pairs in a foreign language while awake, and then those same words were played during certain stages of their sleep. The results showed that when the brain was in the right sleep stage, it could sometimes strengthen the memory of what was already learned. But that's the key: already learned. The brain was not learning new words from zero during sleep. It was just reinforcing what was studied before sleep. This tells us something really valuable. Sleep can be a tool to support learning, but not replace it. If you spend time during the day practicing English, listening, reading, repeating, speaking, and then you sleep well at night, your brain may actually help you store and organize that knowledge. It's like the brain is doing some overnight housekeeping, cleaning up, organizing files, deciding what to keep. So yes, sleep helps with learning, but only after the hard work has already been done while you're awake. There are also studies about targeted memory reactivation. This is when certain cues, like a sound or a word, are played during sleep to help reinforce something you already practiced. For example, if someone learns the word apple in English during the day and hears the word apple while sleeping, their brain might strengthen that memory. But again, it only works if the person already has some connection with the word while awake. And the effect is usually small, not enough to make a dramatic difference by itself. Another thing we know from neuroscience is that learning a language requires a lot of brain functions working together. You need your auditory processing to understand sounds. You need your memory to store words and grammar. You need your motor skills to pronounce things clearly. You need your emotional brain to stay motivated. During sleep, many of these systems are resting or working in ways that are not designed for learning something brand new. You might retain a feeling or a vague impression from a sound, but you won't deeply understand it or remember how to use it correctly the next day. So while sleep is essential for learning, it's not a time when active learning can happen. Think of it like this: if your day is about collecting the ingredients for a meal, then your night, your sleep, is the time when your brain puts everything in the refrigerator, labels it, and gets it ready to use later. But if you don't collect the ingredients first, there's nothing to store. Playing English audio while you sleep is not enough to cook the meal. You need the conscious effort before bedtime. I know this might be disappointing to some of you who really hoped sleep learning was a magic trick. And trust me, I've been there. I've had those moments where I thought, maybe if I just play this audio at night, something will stick. And I'm not saying it's useless. If it helps you create an immersive environment or makes you feel connected to English in a soft, passive way, then great. Just don't expect dramatic results without the effort that comes from being awake, focused, and actively engaged. One more thing science tells us is that sleep quality matters. Poor sleep actually hurts your ability to learn. If you stay up, too late watching videos or stressing about your progress, your brain won't have the energy it needs to support your memory. But if you sleep well, especially after studying or practicing, you give your brain the best chance to help you grow. So the real takeaway from science is this: learning during sleep is not a myth, but it's also not what most people think. It is. Your brain can process and organize information while you sleep, but only if that information has already been introduced and understood while you were awake. That means the key to learning English is still the same: active practice, consistent effort, and good rest. When you combine those things, your results will come. Not because you were listening in your sleep, but because your whole brain and body are working together, day and night, to help you learn. Let me introduce you to someone from our community whose story might sound very familiar. His name is Matteo, and he lives in Milan, Italy. When Matteo first joined our podcast community, he was already very motivated to learn English. He had dreams of working in international marketing and possibly moving to London or Amsterdam one day. His English level was basic, and he was looking for ways to improve fast. Like many people, he searched online for techniques and shortcuts that could help him make quick progress without feeling overwhelmed. That's when he discovered the idea of learning English while sleeping. Matteo was fascinated. He watched videos, read blog posts, and even downloaded playlists made especially for sleep learning. They were full of English phrases, vocabulary, and affirmations meant to sink into the brain during the night. It sounded like the perfect plan. He didn't have much time during the day because of work and family, but he thought, if I can use the night to learn, I won't waste any time. He imagined that after a few weeks or months, he would start understanding more English and maybe even speak more fluently, all while sleeping. For months, Matteo followed this routine. He played English audio every night before bed. Sometimes it was vocabulary lists. Other times it was simple phrases or short conversations. He kept the volume low so it wouldn't wake him, and he used a timer so it would stop after a few hours. He was very consistent, never missing a night. He believed that even if he didn't feel anything immediately, his brain must be absorbing something. But after 2 months, Matteo noticed something disappointing. He still couldn't understand English conversations better, and when he tried to speak, he froze. His vocabulary didn't seem to improve either. In fact, he couldn't remember any of the new words he had supposedly listened to dozens of times while sleeping. He told me that the most frustrating part wasn't just the lack of progress. It was the fact that he truly believed he was working hard. Every night he was doing something, so why wasn't he seeing any results? It felt like he was putting in effort, but getting nothing back. That's when Matteo decided to look deeper into what was going wrong. He started asking himself some hard questions. Was he really learning anything while sleeping? Could passive listening at night really replace active study during the day? That's when he discovered some of the episodes from our podcast and began to understand more about how language learning actually works. He realized that his brain needed more than just passive exposure. It needed engagement. He needed to hear, understand, repeat, and use English while he was awake, with intention. He also discovered something very personal. He had been avoiding active practice because it made him nervous. Listening while sleeping felt safe, but it didn't challenge him. It didn't force him to try, make mistakes, or speak out loud. Matteo decided to change his strategy. He didn't stop listening to English at night entirely, but he stopped depending on it. Instead, he started listening to short English podcasts in the morning when he was fully awake, even for just 10 minutes while getting ready. He picked a few simple expressions and repeated them out loud, trying to say them naturally. He began writing down new words during the day and using them in simple sentences. He also started following short video lessons that included listening and speaking practice. Nothing too long or difficult, just manageable steps that helped him feel more connected to the language. In just a few weeks, he noticed a shift. For the first time, he remembered words without needing to check the dictionary. He was able to understand more of what people were saying in videos, and he even started speaking more confidently during his online language exchange sessions. One moment that made him especially proud was when he introduced himself to a group of tourists in Milan, helping them find a restaurant. It wasn't perfect, but it was real communication, and he did it all on his own. I think Matteo's story is a powerful reminder that effort is not just about time, it's about direction. He was spending time trying to learn, but it wasn't going in the right direction. Once he shifted to more active, conscious practice, even just a little bit each day, his progress started to feel real. He also told me that after he started seeing results, he felt more motivated to continue. He still plays English music or relaxing stories at night sometimes, but now he sees them as support, not as the main method. What I admire most about Matteo is that he didn't give up when things got frustrating. He could have said, "English is too hard for me," or "This just doesn't work." But instead, he stopped, looked at what wasn't working, and tried something new. That takes courage. He allowed himself to learn in a different way, and in doing so, he discovered his own rhythm. Now he's not chasing miracles. He's building skills with intention. If you're listening to this and you feel like you're not making progress, I want you to know you're not alone. Matteo was there too. And maybe the answer is not to try harder, but to try differently. Ask yourself, am I just listening, or am I actually engaging with English? Am I creating small daily habits that help me use the language actively? Am I being kind to myself when I make mistakes and brave enough to keep going anyway? The truth is, there's no shortcut that replaces real interaction with a language, but there are smart ways to make your learning smoother, more enjoyable, and more effective. Matteo's story shows that the key isn't doing more, it's doing better, and sometimes that means changing the way we think about learning entirely. So wherever you are on your journey, remember, progress starts when we take responsibility for our learning and give ourselves permission to be imperfect. Matteo's story is not just about English, it's about trusting the process, facing fears, and finding what works for you. And that's something I hope we can all take with us. One of the things I hear most often from our listeners is, I don't have time to study English every day. And I completely understand that. We're all busy with work, family, school, or other responsibilities. But what if I told you that one of the most powerful tools for improving your English doesn't require you to sit down with a textbook? In fact, you can do it while you're brushing your teeth, cooking dinner, or riding the train. I'm talking about listening. More specifically, conscious and repeated listening. Let me be very clear. Listening to English regularly is incredibly valuable. But it's not just about having English sounds in the background. It's about how you listen. Passive listening, like having English on while you sleep, might seem like a good idea, but it doesn't give your brain what it needs to truly learn. On the other hand, conscious listening, even for just 5 or 10 minutes, can help you notice patterns, absorb natural expressions, and get used to how English really sounds. Now, when I say conscious listening, I don't mean you have to analyze every word or understand every sentence. That would be exhausting. What I mean is giving your attention to the sound of English, the rhythm, the tone, the pronunciation, and the meaning as best as you can. It's okay if you don't understand everything. The point is to train your ear. And the way we train our ears is through repetition. Think about how children learn their first language. They don't understand everything at first. They hear the same words and phrases over and over in context, and slowly they begin to recognize and use them. The same is true for adults learning a new language. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity builds confidence. Let me share a few examples of how you can use this technique in your daily routine. One method I often recommend is selecting a short audio clip, maybe just 1 minute long. It could be a simple dialogue, a podcast intro, or even a scene from a show. Listen to that same clip every morning for a week. Play it while you're making your coffee or brushing your teeth. The first day, it might sound difficult. The second day, you might recognize a few words. By the third day, your brain starts to anticipate the next sentence. And by the end of the week, you'll be amazed at how much more you understand, and maybe even how much you can say along with it. Another great moment for repeated listening is during your commute. If you take the bus, train, or drive to work or school, that time can become your personal English lab. Choose one short audio that you enjoy. Don't change it every day. Stay with the same one for several days. Let your brain build that deep connection with the sounds and structures. It's not boring, it's training. And that's how real fluency is built. You can also use repeated listening during exercise or housework. Let's say you're doing the dishes. That's the perfect moment to play an audio you've already heard before. Because your hands are busy, but your mind is available. You're not analyzing, you're absorbing. It becomes part of your environment, and slowly, English stops feeling like a foreign sound. It becomes familiar, even comforting. I once talked to a listener from Seoul named Minji. She told me that she used to listen to random English podcasts while walking her dog. She thought it was helpful, but she didn't see much progress. Then, she changed her strategy. She picked one 5-minute episode and listened to it every morning walk for a week. At first, it felt repetitive, but by the 3rd day, she was recognizing more. By the 5th day, she could say some parts out loud. By the end of the week, she felt a real difference, and that confidence pushed her to try speaking more with her English tutor, all from just 5 minutes a day. That's the beauty of repeated listening. It's not about doing more, it's about doing better. You don't need hundreds of different audios. You need a few that you enjoy and a commitment to revisit them. Repetition is how the brain learns patterns. It's how you move from understanding one time to understanding automatically. Let me give you a practical suggestion. Pick an audio that is not too hard, something where you understand at least 60 to 70%. That way, your brain can guess. The rest from context. Listen to it once in the morning, listen again during lunch, and maybe once more in the evening. Don't worry if it feels too easy after a few days. That's a sign that your brain is learning. That's when you can move on to a new clip. Step by step, you'll build a strong foundation. Some people ask me, should I read the transcript at the same time? My answer is, it depends. If you want to read along once or twice, that's fine. But don't rely on the text. The goal is to train your ears, not your eyes. We want to develop your listening memory. Reading helps with understanding, but repeating helps with fluency. Focus on the sound. Trust the process. Another listener, Anna from São Paulo, used a similar method. She created a playlist of her favorite short English podcast episodes. She listened to the same one during her morning routine for 3 days. Then she added a new one and repeated that. Within a month, she noticed that she could catch words and expressions in real conversations that she used to miss. That motivated her to speak more. And even though she didn't feel fluent yet, she said, I feel more like English is part of my daily life. And that's the goal. We're not just trying to learn English, we're trying to live with English. Make it part of your environment. Let it become the background to your habits, your routines, your life. Not by accident, but with purpose. That's what makes the difference. So if you feel stuck or overwhelmed, I want to remind you, progress doesn't come from doing a lot once. It comes from doing a little, many times. Choose your audio wisely. Listen with attention. Repeat with intention. And trust that your brain is learning, little by little. It always is. One of the most misunderstood ideas in language learning is the role that sleep plays in the process. So today, I want to talk about this in a simple and practical way. I've already shared that learning a language while you sleep, in the sense of absorbing completely new content without any effort, doesn't work the way many people hope. But sleep is still incredibly important in your learning journey, and I want you to know exactly why. Let's start with something you probably already know. Your brain doesn't turn off when you go to sleep. In fact, it becomes very active in different ways. While you're sleeping, your brain organizes and stores the information you experienced during the day. It goes through a kind of cleanup process. Think of it like this. Your brain is a librarian that at night puts away all the books and papers you left scattered on the desk during the day. It finds the right shelves and places everything in order. That's what memory consolidation is. And it's one of the most powerful things sleep can do for your language learning. Now let me make this very clear. Sleep doesn't magically teach you something new. You can't press play on an English audio, close your eyes, and expect to wake up speaking like a native. That's not how memory works. But what sleep can do is help you remember and reinforce what you've already studied while awake. It strengthens the connections you made while you were actively paying attention. If you studied vocabulary, listened to a story, or practiced a new structure during the day, a good night's sleep will help your brain keep that information. Without sleep, it's like writing in sand. With sleep, it's like carving in stone. Remember a listener from Warsaw named Carolina who used to study late at night, just before bed. She didn't spend hours, just 15 minutes reviewing a few phrases she had learned earlier in the day. Then she went to sleep. She didn't realize at first, but over time, she began to notice something interesting. The words she reviewed before, sleeping were easier to recall the next morning. She said it felt like her brain had saved the information overnight. And actually, there's real science behind that. Many studies show that sleep helps stabilize memories and makes it easier to access them later. It's especially effective when the information is emotionally meaningful or personally important. So if you find a phrase that you really connect with, or a sentence that makes you laugh, and you review it before sleeping, chances are higher that your brain will keep it. That's why I always recommend choosing content that feels relevant to you. Not just what a textbook says you should learn, but words and sentences you want to use. Another useful tip is to review material right before bed that you already know. A little. This is not the time to learn completely new grammar or complex vocabulary. This is a time for gentle review. For example, if you listen to a podcast episode during the day, listen to it again at night with the same level of attention. Let the sounds of the language be the last thing your brain hears before sleep. You're not trying to analyze every word, you're simply reinforcing the patterns and sounds you've already been exposed to. This prepares your brain to store them better. One listener, Ahmed from Cairo, told me that his nighttime routine changed the way he learned. He used to study randomly during the day, but he often forgot what he learned. When he started listening to short English dialogues at night, ones he had already practiced during the day, he began to notice that his memory improved. He said he felt more confident using those phrases in conversations the next day. It wasn't because of the night listening itself, but because he had already focused on those phrases while awake, and his sleep helped reinforce them. You see, sleep is like a partner in your learning process. It can't do the job for you, but it makes the work you've done stronger. If you've ever felt frustrated because you study but forget things quickly, look at your sleep. Are you sleeping enough? Are you reviewing content before bed that you want to remember? Sometimes improving your English is not just about studying more, it's about studying smarter. And sleep is a big part of that strategy. Let me give you a small experiment to try. Choose one short audio, no more than 2 minutes. Make sure it's something you understand mostly, but that still gives you a little challenge. Listen to it once in the afternoon or early evening. Maybe read along if you like. Then, later that night, just before going to sleep, listen to it again. Don't try to memorize it, just enjoy it. Then go to sleep. Do this for 3 nights in a row. You might be surprised at how much more familiar that audio feels after a few days. You may even find yourself repeating some phrases naturally during the day. Another listener, Priya from Mumbai, took this a step further. She created a bedtime playlist of 3 short English recordings, one about daily conversations, one with vocabulary from her work, and one with common expressions. Each night, she would listen to the same playlist after reviewing them briefly during the day. After a few weeks, she told me, "It's strange, but those phrases started popping into my head when I spoke English. I wasn't trying to memorize them, they just stayed." That's the power of learning while awake and reinforcing during sleep. It's important to remember that language learning is not just a mental activity, it's also physical. Your brain is part of your body, and it needs rest to function well. When you sleep, your brain clears away unnecessary information and keeps what's important. If you're constantly tired or skipping sleep, it becomes harder to concentrate, remember, and speak clearly in English. So getting good sleep is not a luxury, it's part of your study routine. Some people feel guilty if they don't study every day. But what if your most effective learning didn't come from studying harder, but from sleeping better? If you've already done a little English practice during the day, like repeating a few phrases or listening to a short story, give your brain the gift of sleep to lock it in. Your brain is always learning, even when you rest. So, no, you can't learn a language from zero just by sleeping. But sleep is not useless. It's powerful. And when you combine active practice with rest, your English becomes more natural, more automatic, and more confident. Creating a nighttime routine that supports your English learning can make a real difference in how well you remember and use what you've studied. Many people don't think of the evening as an opportunity for language growth, but I've seen again and again how small, thoughtful actions at night can support everything you do during the day. In this part of our journey together, I want to help you create a calm and effective evening habit, one that won't stress you out, but will quietly help your English become more natural over time. The first thing to understand is this. Nighttime is not the best moment to learn something brand new. At the end of the day, your brain is tired. You've made decisions, had conversations, maybe worked, taken care of your home or your family. So instead of trying to push your brain to absorb new and difficult material at this point, the key is to reinforce what you already touched earlier. Think of your evening routine as a time for gentle review, not for intense study. One of the easiest things you can do is listen to a short audio in English that uses vocabulary you already know. Maybe it's a recording from a lesson you had that day or a part of a podcast episode you enjoyed. The goal isn't to understand every single word perfectly. It's to let your brain hear the rhythm, the sound, and the structure of English in a calm state. I like to recommend something that's around 1 to 2 minutes long, short enough that you don't lose focus, and familiar enough that it brings you confidence. Repetition builds fluency, and hearing the same structures again helps your brain strengthen its memory. A great example comes from Anna, a listener in Amsterdam. She used to try to read complicated grammar books at night, but she always ended up feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. After changing her approach, she began listening to short daily conversations before bed, nothing too hard, just real, everyday English. After a few weeks, she noticed she could recall those phrases during the day more easily. She said, "At night, I'm not trying to study anymore. I just let the words wash over me." That's exactly the mindset I want you to have. Another helpful practice is reading a small, easy piece of text in English before going to sleep. It could be a paragraph from a graded reader, a short story, or even a dialogue from your learning material. The important thing is to choose something that doesn't feel like a test. You're not trying to analyze it. You're not checking every single definition. You're simply reading in a relaxed way, letting the meaning come to you naturally. I recommend printing it out or using an app that doesn't send notifications. This keeps your routine distraction-free and peaceful. Let me tell you about Rafael, who lives in São Paulo. He created a habit of reading one page from a simple storybook in English every night. He said it was the first time he enjoyed studying regularly because it didn't feel like a chore. After a month, he had finished an entire book. More than that, he told me he could actually remember phrases and expressions without even trying. That's what happens when you give your brain content it enjoys and time to process it during sleep. It's also important to protect your emotional state before bed. Avoid English materials that frustrate you. If you try to read or listen to something that's too difficult, you'll end your day feeling like you failed. And that feeling can affect your sleep quality and your motivation. I've seen this happen with many learners. They push themselves to study late, using advanced texts or videos that they don't fully understand, and then go to sleep feeling discouraged. That's not helpful. Learning a language is already a long journey, so why add pressure at a time when your mind and body need rest? Instead, end your day with a win. Choose content that you can understand, even if it's basic. Confidence grows from small victories. Imagine reading a short paragraph and thinking, "I understood that." That's the kind of feeling that helps your brain stay motivated. And when you sleep after a positive language experience, your brain treats that memory with care. It becomes something worth keeping. If you're not sure where to start, here's one routine I often suggest. First, think back to one thing you learned during the day. Maybe it's a new word or a sentence that you found interesting. Then before bed, take just 5 minutes. Listen to that phrase again if you can. Say it out loud once or twice. Then read a small section of English, just a few lines of something familiar. Let that be the last thing you do before turning off the lights. You don't need more than that. What matters is consistency. You might also want to avoid bright screens and social media before starting your English moment. Give yourself a few quiet minutes, maybe with low light, and make this time feel special. Learning a language isn't just about logic, it's also emotional. The way you feel when you're learning affects how much you retain. So if you feel calm and confident, your brain becomes more open to remembering and understanding English. A listener from Tokyo, Haruki, told me he started a language wind-down routine at night. He listens to a short podcast episode, something he already listened to once during the day, and then writes 1 or 2 simple sentences in English in his notebook. Not long, not perfect. Just a way to connect with the language one last time, before sleep. He said it gave him a sense of progress without stress. He feels like English is part of his daily life, not just something to check off a list. If you prefer speaking, you can also try whispering a few phrases to yourself at night. Maybe something like, "Today I learned," or "Tomorrow I want to practice" in English. It doesn't matter if no one hears you. These little moments connect your thoughts with the language, and that helps build fluency from the inside out. The most important message I want to leave you with is this. Your evening routine doesn't need to be long or complicated. It needs to feel supportive. Give your brain something gentle, something familiar, and something positive in English at night. This will not only help you remember what you've learned, it will also build your confidence, reduce stress, and make English feel like a natural part of your life. The night is not just for rest, It's also a quiet space where your learning can grow, gently and without pressure. I want to share with you the story of Priya, who lives in the bustling city of Mumbai. Like many learners, she was fascinated by the idea of improving her English simply by listening to podcasts before going to sleep. She thought that if she played English audio every night, even if she was only half awake, her brain would soak up the language naturally. So every evening, Priya would put on her headphones, play a podcast in English, and drift off to sleep while the words flowed around her. She believed this would help her become fluent faster without much extra effort. But after weeks and even months of doing this, she realized something important. Her English wasn't really improving. She still struggled to understand spoken English clearly during the day and felt hesitant to speak. Priya's story is familiar to many. Passive listening, like falling asleep to English audio, can feel like a good idea, but often it doesn't lead to real progress on its own. For Priya, the turning point came when she decided to change her approach from passive listening to something more active. During the day, she began to take notes. Whenever she heard a new word or phrase in a podcast, she wrote it down in a small notebook she kept with her. This simple act of writing helped her focus more during the day and made the language feel more real. She wasn't just hearing words, she was interacting with them. Later, when night came, Priya didn't just play the podcast again. This time, she used her notes as a guide. She would listen to the same episodes but pause when she heard the words she had written down. Then she repeated them quietly to herself. This repetition turned her night listening from a passive background activity into an active practice session. It was no longer just noise playing while she slept. It became a valuable time to reinforce what she had encountered during the day. Priya told me that this change transformed how she felt about learning English. She went from feeling stuck and frustrated to excited about her progress. She started to recognize the words she had learned when she heard them in conversations or on TV. Her confidence grew because she was no longer relying solely on chance exposure. She was creating meaningful connections with the language. The active involvement made all the difference. One of the reasons this works so well is because of how our brains process information. When you write something down, your brain pays more attention. It's a way of telling yourself, this is important. Then, when you hear the word again, later your brain is ready to strengthen the memory. When Priya repeated the words during her evening listening, she was helping her brain practice recalling the language, not just recognizing it. This is an important step toward real fluency. I want to encourage you to try something similar. If you listen to English during the day, whether it's podcasts, songs, or videos, keep a notebook or an app where you can jot down words or phrases that catch your attention. Don't worry about writing complete sentences or perfect grammar. Just capture the sounds and words that feel useful or interesting. Then, when it's time for your night routine, use your notes to focus your listening. Replay the parts that include those words and say them out loud, softly or clearly, whatever feels comfortable. This small change can turn a passive habit into active learning that moves you forward. Priya's experience shows that learning English is not about magic or shortcuts. It's about combining listening, writing, and repeating in ways that work with how your brain learns best. The idea that you can learn a language just by hearing it in your sleep is attractive, but the real magic comes when you put in a little effort to interact with the language consciously. Priya didn't stop listening to podcasts before bed. She just added a step that made her time with English more meaningful and effective. If you're someone who likes podcasts or audiobooks, you already have a great resource. Now, think about how you can use those resources more actively. Take small notes during the day, review them at night, and speak the words or phrases. This practice doesn't have to take long. 5 or 10 minutes is enough to make a big difference over time. Just like Priya, you might find that this simple change makes your English feel more natural and less like a struggle. I also want to remind you that this process is personal. What works for Priya might need to be adjusted for you, and that's okay. Maybe writing is not your favorite method. Perhaps you prefer recording yourself or using flashcards. The key is to move from passive exposure to active engagement. Find what fits your style and schedule and be patient with yourself. Learning a language is a journey, not a race. Priya's story is a great example of how small changes can lead to big results. She didn't suddenly become fluent overnight, But her new approach helped her break through a plateau. She started noticing progress that motivated her to keep going. And that's really what matters, finding methods that keep you engaged and confident. When you feel supported and see real improvement, your motivation will stay strong. So, if you've been listening to English while falling asleep and wondering why your skills haven't improved much, take a moment to rethink your routine. Consider what you can do during the day to make your evening listening more effective. Remember Priya's example, writing down words and phrases, then repeating them while listening again before bed. This transforms passive hearing into active learning, giving your brain a better chance to absorb and remember English. Your time at night can be a peaceful and productive moment for your English journey. Use it wisely by combining what you hear with what you practice. This balance will help you move forward step by step, building confidence and skill in a way that feels natural and rewarding. Just like Priya, you have the power to turn your listening habits into real progress, one word at a time. I want to talk honestly with you about something very important when it comes to learning English, or any language really. There's a big temptation, especially in today's world full of quick fixes and miracle solutions, to look for shortcuts that promise fast results without much effort. I get it. Learning a new language can feel overwhelming, and who wouldn't want an easy way to become fluent? But I have to be clear, relying only on so-called miracle methods is risky. It can slow your progress and even cause frustration. I've seen many learners fall into this trap, hoping that passive techniques alone will solve their challenges, but then getting stuck because real improvement takes more than just listening or repeating without thinking. Let's be honest. There's no magic pill or secret trick that replaces the hard work involved in learning English. Passive methods, like listening to audio during sleep or just hearing English without focusing, can be helpful as part of a balanced approach. They can support your learning by increasing your exposure to the language and helping your brain become familiar with the sounds and rhythm. But if you depend solely on these passive methods, you risk missing the essential step of active practice that turns knowledge into skill. It's like trying to learn how to play the piano just by listening to beautiful music all day long. Yes, listening to piano music will help you understand the sound and feel inspired, but it won't teach you how to move your fingers across the keys, build muscle memory, or read the notes. For that, you need to sit down and practice. I always encourage learners to think of language learning like learning any new skill, whether it's playing a sport, cooking, or dancing. You can watch videos, listen to experts, and study theory, but eventually you have to get hands-on experience. With English, that means speaking, writing, reading, and listening in ways that make your brain work actively. When you engage with the language, even making mistakes, you're building pathways in your brain that help you communicate naturally. That active practice is what truly leads to fluency. Many people I talk to want to believe in a quick solution because the idea of spending months or years practicing every day sounds tiring or impossible. But I want to remind you that patience and consistency are your best friends on this journey. Miracle methods might give a boost now and then, but without the steady work of practicing and applying what you learn, progress will be slow or invisible. It's the daily, sometimes small efforts that add up to real change. Think about it like this. If you want to get fit, you might watch exercise videos and learn about nutrition, but without moving your body and actually working out regularly, you won't see results. The same goes for English. Passive listening is like watching exercise videos, but active speaking, writing, and interacting with the language are your workouts. Both parts are important, but the workouts are essential. I want to be clear that I'm not saying passive methods are useless. They definitely have their place. For example, listening to English while doing chores or walking can be a way to increase your exposure and get used to the sounds. And as I mentioned before, listening to English before sleep after focused study can help your brain consolidate memories. But these should complement active practice, not replace it. Another risk of relying too much on miracle methods is that it can create unrealistic expectations. If you think you can learn English just by listening passively without trying to speak or write, you might get discouraged when your skills don't improve. That disappointment can make you give up or feel less confident. I've met many learners who felt exactly this way, and I want to help you avoid that cycle. Real progress happens when you celebrate small wins from your own effort and involvement. Also, I want to highlight the importance of facing challenges head-on. It's natural to want to avoid difficult parts of learning, but every challenge you meet and overcome strengthens your skills. If you only stick to easy or passive activities, you might stay comfortable but never grow. Taking risks, trying to speak even when you're unsure, and practicing new vocabulary actively will help you move forward much faster. Imagine if Matteo from Milan or Priya from Mumbai had only trusted miracle methods. They might have continued listening to English while sleeping or during passive moments and felt stuck. But because they added active steps, like writing notes, repeating phrases, and speaking, they found real improvement. That shows how combining effort with smart strategies is the key. I want you to feel empowered, not discouraged. Learning English is a journey, and like any journey, it has ups and downs. But you can control how much effort you put in and how you balance your learning activities. The magic isn't in shortcuts, but in combining the right habits, practicing regularly, and being patient with yourself. If you want to be confident speaking English, you have to move beyond passive listening and start creating moments where you use the language actively. So, the next time you come across a product or method promising you can learn English while you sleep or become fluent overnight, think carefully. Ask yourself, does this approach encourage me to practice, speak, and engage? Or is it mostly passive? Does it help me take control of my learning? If the answer is no, it's probably not the best tool to rely on alone. Remember, you're not alone in this. Thousands of learners face the same temptations and frustrations. The difference between those who succeed and those who give up is often the willingness to do the active work, even when it's not easy or exciting. I'm here to support you on this path, sharing stories, tips, and encouragement to help you stay motivated and focused. Keep in mind that real improvement comes from building habits that include active use of English every day. Speak to yourself, write a short journal, read a paragraph, or practice new words. These steps build your skill gradually but solidly. Combining this active practice with the helpful passive methods makes your learning experience balanced and effective. So please don't fall for the trap of thinking that miracle methods will replace your effort. Use passive listening as a helpful addition, not a replacement. Take time to practice speaking, writing, and thinking in English actively. Your progress depends on the quality of your practice, and you have the power to make your English grow by putting in the right kind of work. You can do this. I believe in you, and I'm here to guide you through the realistic and practical path that leads to success in English. Let's keep moving forward together, focusing on what really works and building your confidence day by day. When we talk about learning English while you sleep, it's important to understand that the sleep itself is not the time when new words or grammar rules magically enter your brain. But sleep can still be a powerful ally in your learning journey if you use the right strategies. I want to share with you how you can make your nights work for you indirectly, helping your brain process and strengthen what you've studied during the day. It's less about learning new things during sleep, and more about preparing your brain to absorb and keep what you've already practiced. So let's explore some simple and effective ways you can transform your nighttime routine into a helpful tool for your English learning. First, one of the most valuable things you can do is to review lightly before going to bed. This means spending a few minutes with material you already know, words, phrases, or sentences that you feel comfortable with but want to keep fresh in your memory. It could be a short story, a podcast episode you've listened to before, or flashcards with vocabulary you're working on. The key is to avoid overwhelming your brain with completely new information right before sleep, because your brain needs some space to rest and process. When you review gently, you remind your brain about the English it already knows, which helps with memory consolidation while you sleep. This review doesn't have to be long or intense. In fact, keeping it short and pleasant is better because it prepares your mind in a calm and positive way for a restful night. Think of it as giving your brain a small gift of familiarity and comfort with English before it rests. I often suggest choosing materials that make you feel good and motivated, maybe a story you enjoy or a podcast that makes you smile. Positive emotions help your brain link the language to good experiences, which encourages you to keep learning. Another important point I want to mention is managing stress related to English learning. Sometimes people feel anxious about their progress or frustrated by difficulties. If you go to bed with these stressful feelings, your brain might have a harder time relaxing and processing the information. Stress creates tension in your body and mind, which can interfere with sleep quality and memory formation. So it's a good idea to create a nighttime routine that includes some relaxation techniques or simple breathing exercises to calm your mind before bed. When your brain is calm and your body is relaxed, sleep becomes more restorative, and your brain can do a better job organizing and storing what you've learned. I also want to highlight the importance of giving your brain enough space and time to process English naturally. Sleep is not just a break. It's an active state where your brain works to organize memories and experiences from the day. This means the more focused and attentive you are during your waking hours, the more your brain has to work with while you rest. For example, if during the day you practice speaking or listening actively or write short sentences, you are feeding your brain with material to strengthen overnight. Sleep helps by clearing out distractions and reinforcing important information, making it easier to recall later. However, if your day includes lots of distractions, multitasking, or half-hearted learning, your brain has less clear input to work with during sleep. This is why the quality of your daytime practice influences how well your brain can use sleep to support your English learning. It's like a gardener planting seeds. The better care you take during the day, the more your brain can help those seeds grow at night. Something I see a lot is learners trying to fill their heads with new English just before bed, thinking this will speed up learning. But this can backfire if the material is too difficult or unfamiliar. It can cause frustration and restless sleep, which blocks the benefits of memory consolidation. Instead, I recommend choosing familiar, manageable content before bed and saving more challenging new lessons for times when you're fully awake and alert. This helps your brain build confidence and avoid overload. Now, how can you practically apply all this? A simple nighttime routine could look like this. After dinner, spend 10-15 minutes reviewing an English podcast you enjoyed earlier, or read a few paragraphs of a book you're comfortable with. Avoid jumping into complicated grammar exercises or trying to memorize long lists of new words right before sleeping. Then, spend a few minutes relaxing with deep breathing or mindfulness to ease your mind. Finally, make sure your sleeping environment is comfortable and free from distractions like bright lights or noise. By doing this, you're not just aiming to learn while you sleep in the literal sense, but you're setting the stage for your brain to use sleep as a natural learning partner. This approach respects how our brains work best, by balancing active practice and restful processing. It also makes learning less stressful and more enjoyable, because you're not forcing your brain to do impossible things overnight. One interesting fact I want to share is that scientists who study sleep and learning have found that the brain replays memories during certain sleep stages, like deep sleep and REM sleep. This replay helps strengthen neural connections related to what you practiced during the day. So, when you prepare your brain with light review and keep your mind relaxed, you're helping this replay process be more effective. It's like giving your brain a highlight reel of your English practice to focus on while you rest. You might wonder, does this mean I can skip studying during the day and just focus on bedtime review? The answer is no. Sleep is a helper, not a replacement. The most important work happens when you're awake and engaged, actively practicing English. What sleep does is support and enhance that work, helping your brain keep what you've learned and make it easier to use later. To make your sleep work for your English learning, I also suggest consistency. Try to keep a regular sleep schedule and bedtime routine, so your brain gets used to processing memories during the night. Irregular sleep patterns or poor sleep quality can reduce the benefits you get from this natural memory consolidation. Good sleep hygiene, like limiting screen time before bed, avoiding caffeine late in the day, and keeping your bedroom cool and dark, also helps. Remember, the way you prepare for sleep matters as much as the sleep itself when it comes to language learning. Making small changes to your evening habits can add up over time, creating a powerful routine that supports your progress. It's about working with your brain's natural rhythms, not against them. So tonight, I invite you to try this approach. Before you turn off the lights, take a few minutes to review some English that feels comfortable and positive to you. Then, relax your mind and body, so your brain can rest deeply and work its magic on your memories. This simple but powerful habit can help you feel more confident and prepared to keep improving your English day by day. Learning English is a journey, and every part of your day, including your night, can play a role if you use the right strategies. I'm excited for you to discover how sleep can be your secret learning partner. Not because you learn new words while unconscious, but because your brain uses rest time to organize and keep what you've practiced with focus and care. Let's keep building habits that support this natural process together. I want to tell you about Sophia, who lives in the beautiful city of Barcelona. She's someone who, like many English learners, hoped that listening to stories in English every night while falling asleep would magically boost her skills. Sophia loved the idea of immersing herself in English effortlessly, especially after long, busy days when it felt hard to find extra time or energy to study. So, every night, she would play audio stories in English as she relaxed before bed. She thought this habit would help her absorb the language naturally and improve her speaking and understanding over time. At first, Sophia did notice something interesting. Listening to English stories at night made the language feel familiar. It was comforting to have the sounds of English around her as she drifted off to sleep. The rhythm of the stories and the familiar voices created a sense of connection to English that she hadn't felt before. It helped her feel less isolated in her language learning journey and reminded her that she was making progress, even if it was slow. But after several weeks, Sophia realized that although her listening skills were improving, her speaking wasn't. She still found it difficult to form sentences or express herself clearly when she tried to speak English during the cure day. This is a common experience for many learners. Passive listening, like hearing English in the background, is helpful for building comfort and recognition, but it isn't enough to develop active skills like speaking fluently. Sophia understood this when she decided to make a small change in her routine. She started repeating some of the phrases she heard during the day. When she listened to a story in the morning or afternoon, she would pause and say the sentence out loud, trying to copy the pronunciation and intonation. Sometimes she recorded herself speaking and listened back to find ways to improve. This simple but powerful step made a huge difference. By repeating and recording herself, Sophia turned her passive listening into active practice. It was no longer just about hearing English. It became about using English. This helped her notice her mistakes and build confidence. Over time, she saw her speaking become clearer and more natural. The act of speaking aloud also helped her remember vocabulary and sentence structures better than just listening could. The nighttime stories remained a useful part of her routine, but now they served a new purpose. Instead of relying only on audio at night, she used the stories to maintain daily contact with the language, keeping her brain engaged and familiar with English sounds and patterns. This approach also made learning more enjoyable for Sophia. Repeating phrases and recording herself felt like a game, and she could track her progress in a way she hadn't before. It gave her a sense of accomplishment and motivated her to keep going. She found that even when she was tired or busy, this active step required only a few minutes but brought real improvement. It helped her break through the frustration many learners feel when they can understand English but struggle to speak it. Sophia's story is a great example of how combining passive listening with active use creates the best results. Nighttime audio can be a wonderful tool to expose yourself to English regularly, but to really improve speaking skills, you need to use your voice. Practice repeating sentences, record yourself, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. This kind of effort builds your confidence and makes your English more natural. Plus, it keeps your learning dynamic and interactive, which is essential for real progress. I encourage you to think about your own learning routine. Are you mostly listening passively, or do you find ways to actively use English every day? Try to add small moments where you speak out loud, repeat sentences, or even talk to yourself in English. You don't need a perfect accent or flawless grammar. The goal is to get comfortable using your voice and build habits that support your fluency. Remember, it's okay to start small. Even just repeating a few phrases each day can lead to big improvements over time. Using audio stories at night, like Sophia did, is a lovely way to keep your English exposure steady and consistent. But the real magic happens when you combine that with active speaking practice during your waking hours. This balance helps you move from understanding English to actually using it naturally. It also makes your learning journey more satisfying because you see real change in your ability to communicate. So, if you haven't tried recording yourself or repeating phrases aloud, give it a chance. You might be surprised at how much it helps. It doesn't require special equipment. Your phone or computer's microphone is enough. And the best part is you can listen back and celebrate your progress as your English improves day by day. Sophia's experience shows us that learning a language is a mix of different habits and methods. It's about being patient with yourself and finding ways to connect with English that fit your lifestyle and personality. Nighttime listening creates a great foundation, but active speaking practice builds the house. Both are important and, when combined, they make a powerful team to help you become more fluent. This story reminds us that progress is often a step-by-step process. It's okay to feel stuck sometimes or to need to try new approaches. The important thing is to keep moving forward and to keep your connection with English alive, day and night. Just like Sophia, you can create your own routine that fits you, blending listening and speaking in ways that work for your schedule and learning style. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and don't give up. Your journey with English is unique, and every small effort brings you closer to your goals. I want to talk to you about how to use audio recordings in a way that truly supports your English learning journey. Many people believe that simply playing English audios all day will automatically improve their skills, but the reality is a bit more nuanced. If you want to make the most of your listening practice, it's important to be smart and practical about how you use these resources. Let me walk you through some simple steps that you can follow to turn audio listening into an effective habit, one that fits easily into your daily routine and actually helps you improve your English. First, start by choosing audios that match your current level, especially those that use vocabulary and phrases you already know. It's tempting to challenge yourself with difficult materials, but if you don't recognize most of the words, you might feel lost or frustrated. When you listen to something familiar, your brain can focus on understanding the meaning and the sounds rather than struggling to decode new words. This familiarity makes listening more enjoyable and less stressful. You can find podcasts, stories, or even simple conversations that use common everyday language. This approach helps your brain connect new information with what you already know, which is essential for learning. Once you have your audio, use headphones and keep the volume at a comfortable, low level. Listening to English with headphones allows you to pick up details you might miss otherwise, like pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. Keeping the volume low means the sound won't be overwhelming or distracting, and it's easier to relax while you listen. This relaxed state is important because when you're tense or distracted, your brain won't absorb the language as well. Listening carefully, even if you don't catch every word, trains your ear and improves your ability to understand spoken English in different situations. I also recommend linking your audio listening to a relaxing part of your daily routine. For example, you might listen while you're preparing dinner, taking a walk, or doing some light stretching before bed. Associating English audio with a calming activity makes the habit feel natural and enjoyable, rather than like a chore. It also helps your mind relax, which is great for language learning because your brain processes information better when it's not stressed. Over time, this routine becomes automatic, and you'll find yourself looking forward to these moments of English immersion without feeling pressured. But here is a key point I want you to remember. The quality of your attention during the day will determine how much these audio sessions help. If you spend your day distracted or stressed, passive listening won't do much for you. Instead, try to practice focused learning during your waking hours. This means paying attention to new words, practicing speaking, and reviewing material actively. When you combine active daytime practice with relaxed listening during routine moments, your progress accelerates. Your brain uses these different modes of exposure to strengthen connections and improve both comprehension and speaking skills. Let's think about how this works in real life. Imagine you are listening to a story or conversation you already understand fairly well. During the day, you might write down some interesting expressions or practice saying them out loud. Then, during your relaxed audio time, you listen again and let those phrases sink in naturally. You are not trying to memorize everything at once. Instead, you are gently reinforcing what you practiced earlier. This method helps you build confidence and makes learning feel less overwhelming. Another tip is to repeat short sections of the audio. If a phrase or sentence sounds useful or interesting, pause and replay it a few times. Try to say it out loud as well. This active repetition helps train your mouth and brain to produce English sounds correctly, which improves your speaking and listening skills together. It might feel strange at first, but don't worry. This practice is one of the most effective ways to build fluency. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes because that's part of learning. You can also vary the types of audio you use. Sometimes listen to stories, other times to interviews or simple conversations. The variety keeps your brain engaged and exposes you to different accents and speaking speeds. But always keep your listening level comfortable. If something feels too difficult or confusing, switch to easier content or slow down the playback speed if your audio player allows it. The goal is to enjoy the learning process and keep it sustainable. It's important to avoid multitasking too much while listening. If you're doing something that requires full attention, like driving or cooking with sharp knives, focus on those tasks first. Instead, use times when you can be more relaxed but still awake, like when you are folding laundry or walking. The brain needs to be alert enough to catch sounds and meanings, even if you are not fully focused on the audio. Finally, don't be afraid to create your own personalized audio library. Collect your favorite podcasts, stories, or lessons that you find motivating and useful. Having a go-to set of materials you enjoy listening to makes it easier to stick to your habit. When you feel connected to the content, learning becomes more natural, and you look forward to practicing every day. So, to sum up these steps, pick familiar audio materials, listen with headphones at low volume, associate your listening with relaxing daily activities, focus on active learning during the day, repeat useful phrases aloud, vary your audio sources, avoid distractions, and build a personal collection of English audio that motivates you. When you follow these simple tips, you turn passive listening into a powerful tool for your English learning journey. Remember, language learning is not about rushing or forcing yourself. It's about creating habits that fit your lifestyle, feel enjoyable, and help your brain absorb English naturally. Using audio wisely is a fantastic way to build your listening skills and stay connected to the language, day by day. Keep exploring different audios, stay curious, and listen actively and mindfully. Your English will improve little by little, and you'll feel more confident using the language in real situations. I want to take a moment to talk directly to you about something very important in your English learning journey. Sometimes it's easy to fall into the trap of waiting for results without putting in the real work. I've seen this happen with so many learners, and maybe you felt it too. You listen to audios, watch videos, maybe even repeat a few words here and there, but somehow the progress you hope for doesn't seem to come. You might find yourself asking, "Why am I not improving?" Or, "Is this really working for me?" These are natural questions, and I want you to reflect on them honestly today. So here's a question for you. Are you waiting for results without real practice? This is not meant to judge you, but rather to help you pause and think about your own learning habits. Learning a language is an active process. It requires your attention, your effort, and your willingness to engage. It's not about magic or shortcuts, but about consistent, intentional steps forward. When you understand this, you start to see where you can make changes that truly help you grow. I remember when I was learning a new language myself. There were times when I thought I could absorb everything just by listening passively or by memorizing a few words. But real progress came only when I started practicing with purpose. That meant speaking as much as I could, even if I made mistakes, writing down new expressions, and using the language every day in real situations. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was necessary. The more I practiced actively, the more confident I became. The same can happen for you. Reflecting on your own experience also means looking honestly at the habits you've built. Are you dedicating enough time to practicing speaking, listening, reading, and writing? Or are you mostly hoping that exposure alone will do the job? It's important to balance input, like listening and reading, with output, which means actually using English yourself. When you focus only on input without output, your brain may recognize words and phrases, but it won't build the muscle memory needed to speak or write fluently. I want you to think about how consistent you have been. Consistency beats intensity, every time. Even a few minutes of focused practice every day is better than long but irregular study sessions. When you practice regularly with intention, your brain forms stronger connections, and the language becomes a natural part of you. On the other hand, when you skip days or don't engage fully, progress slows down, and frustration can build. Sometimes we expect fast results and get discouraged when progress seems slow. But learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. The key is to keep moving forward, even if the steps seem small. Celebrate every new word you learn, every sentence you manage to say, and every time you understand something you couldn't before. These small wins build confidence and motivation. It's also helpful to ask yourself what motivates you. Why do you want to learn English? When you connect with your personal reasons, whether it's for travel, work, study, or making friends, you create a deeper intention to practice regularly. This motivation fuels your commitment and helps you push through moments of doubt or difficulty. If you find yourself waiting for results without practicing actively, try to shift your mindset. Instead of hoping to magically absorb English, focus on what actions you can take today to improve. Can you speak to someone in English for 5 minutes? Can you write a short journal entry or repeat a new phrase aloud? Can you listen carefully to a podcast and try to understand the main ideas? These simple actions, done regularly, lead to real improvement. You might also consider keeping a learning journal or log. Write down what you practiced each day and how it felt. Reflect on what worked well and what you want to improve next. This habit creates awareness and accountability. When you see your progress over time, it becomes clear that consistent effort truly pays off. I also encourage you to be kind to yourself. Learning a language isn't easy, and it's normal to face challenges. Don't compare yourself to others or expect perfection. Focus on your own journey and celebrate your unique progress. When you embrace mistakes as part of learning, you reduce fear and open yourself to new opportunities to grow. Remember, your brain learns best when you are engaged and curious. If you feel bored or overwhelmed, it's a sign to adjust your approach. Try different activities, find topics that interest you, or study with a friend or community. Learning becomes much easier and more enjoyable when you feel connected and supported. Finally, I want you to think about your long-term goals. What do you want to achieve with your English? How will you feel when you can speak confidently, understand movies without subtitles, or write emails clearly? Visualizing these moments can give you the motivation to practice daily with intention. Progress might be slow, but every effort counts. So today, I invite you to reflect deeply on your own learning process. Are you waiting for results without real practice? If yes, that's okay. Awareness is the first step toward change. Start taking small, intentional steps forward, and you will see your English improve over time. You are capable of more than you think, and with patience and persistence, you will reach your goals. Keep going, and remember that you are not alone on this journey. Today, I want to take a moment to go over some of the most important points we've discussed in this episode, just to make sure everything is clear and ready for you to apply in your English learning journey. Sometimes when we hear a lot of information, it's easy to forget what really matters. So let's pause and recap the key ideas that can make a difference for you as you work toward fluency. First, listening to English regularly is definitely helpful. When you listen to English, you get familiar with the sounds, rhythms, and common phrases. This helps your brain get used to the language naturally. But here's the thing. Listening alone is not enough. Passive listening, like just hearing English in the background or during sleep, doesn't replace the active practice that you need to actually speak and understand English confidently. It's like trying to learn to swim by watching videos. Watching is useful, but getting in the water and moving your body is what really teaches you how to swim. The same goes for language. Listening helps build a foundation, but practicing speaking, reading, writing, and interacting with the language is what leads to real progress. We also talked about the role of sleep in learning. Sleep is incredibly important because it helps your brain organize and consolidate memories from the day. But sleep itself does not teach you new words or grammar rules if you haven't practiced them actively while awake. So, studying before bed can be very useful if you review material you already know or briefly go over new vocabulary. Your brain will then work quietly to store this information so you remember it better later. However, relying on sleep alone to learn English without conscious effort during the day will not bring you the results you want. Sleep supports learning, but it cannot replace active study and practice. Another key point is using audio resources smartly. Instead of just putting on long, complicated audios or letting English play in the background, choose recordings that contain vocabulary and topics you are familiar with. Use headphones at a comfortable volume and listen intentionally, not distracted by other tasks. You can even repeat short segments to improve your understanding and pronunciation, making listening part of a relaxing routine, like before going to sleep or during quiet moments, helps create a positive learning habit. But remember, the quality of your attention during the day when you study and practice will determine how much benefit you get from this audio listening. I also want to remind you that combining listening with active use of the language is the secret. Try to speak out loud, even if it's just repeating phrases or talking to yourself. Writing a few sentences in English, keeping a learning journal, or having conversations with friends or language partners are excellent ways to put your learning into action. These practices build your confidence and improve your fluency much faster than only listening. Throughout this episode, we looked at real stories of people like Matteo from Milan, Priya from Mumbai, and Sophia from Barcelona. Each of them learned that simply hearing English during sleep or passively listening was not enough. When they added active practice, whether it was repeating phrases, writing words down, or speaking regularly, their English improved significantly. Their experiences show that patience, consistent effort, and smart strategies bring the best results. You might find that sometimes it's tempting to look for quick fixes or miracles in language learning, but the truth is, there is no magic shortcut. Learning English takes time and dedication, but with the right approach, it can also be enjoyable and rewarding. Being honest about your learning habits and making small daily improvements will help you move forward steadily. If you ever feel stuck or frustrated, remember this summary. Listen to English often, but don't expect passive listening to do all the work. Use your sleep time wisely by reviewing material before bed, but make sure most of your learning happens actively when you are awake. Use audio materials with intention, and incorporate speaking and writing practice regularly. Keep consistent and be patient with yourself. This is a journey that requires balance between listening and speaking, between passive exposure and active engagement, and between effort and rest. When you find that balance, learning English becomes not only effective but also something you look forward to every day. I hope these reminders help you feel more confident and motivated to practice your English consistently and smartly. Hi. More you practice actively and the more you make listening a focused habit, the closer you get to your goal. Keep going and keep trusting the process, because every step forward counts. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate you being here and joining me on this journey to improve your English. It's always a pleasure to share helpful insights and real experiences that can support you in becoming more confident and comfortable with the language. Remember, learning English is a process, and every little step you take counts, no matter how small it might feel at the moment. I want to remind you that the key to progress is consistency. Even on days when you don't feel motivated or when it seems like you're not making any visible progress, keep going. Your brain is working. Behind the scenes and with continued practice, you'll start to see those small improvements adding up over time. The important thing is not to give up or expect instant results. Instead, focus on enjoying the process, because when you enjoy learning, it becomes part of your lifestyle rather than a chore. That mindset shift makes a huge difference in how far you can go. If you found this episode helpful, I encourage you to explore other episodes of the English Talk community. We cover a wide range of topics designed to support learners at every level. Whether you want to improve your listening skills, build vocabulary, practice speaking, or understand grammar in a simple way, there's something here for you. Listening to a variety of episodes will expose you to different accents, expressions, and learning strategies. This variety will keep your learning experience fresh and exciting, helping you stay motivated. Also, don't forget to keep using the tips we talked about today. Try to build small habits that fit naturally into your daily routine. Maybe listen to English audio during your commute, repeat phrases out loud while cooking, or review a few vocabulary words before going to bed. These little moments add up and create strong foundations for your language skills. I want you to feel supported every step of the way. Remember that you are not alone in this. There are millions of people around the world working on their English every day, just like you. Our community is here to help you stay motivated and connected. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving a review or a like. This simple action helps the podcast reach more learners who need this support. When you join the community, you become part of a global family that understands the challenges and celebrates the victories of learning English. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with this thought. Learning English is not magic, but it can feel magical when you enjoy the process. The magic comes from your dedication, your curiosity, and your willingness to keep trying even when it's difficult. When you approach learning with joy and patience, you open the door to new opportunities, friendships, and experiences. Language learning can change your life in ways you might never have imagined, and it all starts with small steps taken day by day. So keep practicing, keep listening, and keep speaking. I look forward to sharing more stories, tips, and encouragement with you in the next episodes. Thank you again for being part of the English Talk community. I believe in you, and I'm excited to see where your English journey takes you. Take care and see you soon.